It's hard to imagine Paris without thinking of the Eiffel Tower, but all things considered, it's not that old. So what did folks in the 19th century really think of Gustave Eiffel's masterpiece? The Eiffel Tower got the grandest of grand openings on March 31st, 1889. It then got another one on May 15th, partly because the French really love a party, but mostly to coincide with the beginning of the Exposition Universelle. Millions of tourists headed to Paris for this World's Fair, and nearly 2 million visited the Eiffel Tower alone. Crunch the numbers, and that's roughly 12,000 visitors per day across the Exposition's 5-month run. And of course, they've just kept on coming since.
The Eiffel Tower to me means love, romance, sexy as well.
The 1889 Exposition Universelle covered 237 acres across Paris. Exhibits spanned the Champ de Mars and the Seine, and a total of 61,722 exhibitors were housed in 80 of the city's most magnificent buildings. The fair allowed visitors to walk through stunning gardens and great domed pavilions themed to different nations, although there were a few absences. Specifically, many of Europe's monarchies weren't too keen on showing up to an event that commemorated the time France killed their king. When the Eiffel Tower opened, its fate was far from certain. It had been built for the Exposition Universelle, and it was only intended to stand for about 2 decades. At the inauguration event, Gustave Eiffel showed the first curious visitors around his tower, which was then the tallest man-made structure in the world. After the tour ended, the event's organizers displayed a massive tricolor flag accompanied by a 21-gun salute. This first group of visitors oohed and awed at the monument's spectacular views, becoming the first of countless millions who have since fallen in love with the tower. Today, people celebrate Eiffel Tower Day every March 31st in remembrance of Eiffel's opening tour.
It's unbelievable, a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
To get an invitation to Eiffel Tower's inauguration, you had to either know people or be known. Among others, the event was attended by Pierre Tirard, the French Prime Minister, as well as a crowd of noted dignitaries eager to scope out the views from the top. The tower would become something of a celeb hotspot over the next few months, attracting the likes of the future King Edward VII, French actress Sarah Bernhardt, George I of Greece, the Shah of Persia, and Prince Baudouin of Belgium. The tower even got a visit from William F. Cody, otherwise known as Buffalo Bill, who probably seemed a little out of place sipping champagne on a Parisian rooftop. But perhaps the most celebrated visit was that of Sadi Carnot, president of the French Republic, who visited in July 1889. After falling in love with the soaring views from the tower's peak, he put his money where his mouth was. Carnot awarded 200 francs to each employee at the tower and 100 francs each to the staff of the tower's newspaper. Besides dignitaries and politicians, 200 laborers who'd worked on the Eiffel Tower attended the opening day festivities, 150 construction workers, and 50 designers and engineers. The feat these laborers had achieved was nothing less than monumental. In building the tower, they'd assembled 18,038 metallic components using 2.5 million rivets, worked with 7,300 tons of iron, and applied 60 tons of exterior paint. The tower bears the name of Gustave Eiffel because he owned the company that built it, but it was actually designed by 2 engineers, Émile Noguier and Maurice Coquelin. They also had the help of an architect named Stéphane Sauvestre. Eiffel himself probably summed up the tower best when he said, "It would symbolize not only the art of the modern engineer, but also the century of industry and science in which we are living." During construction, workers at Eiffel's factory assembled the parts for the tower before another set of workers took over at the site. They did this in record time, too, as the tower took just 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days to complete. Even more impressively, only 1 worker died in the process, an incredible achievement considering the nature of the work and the standards at the time. If you want to get super technical, the person who died didn't really die during the construction period. He visited the tower on his off day, so he didn't die constructing the actual tower. Bad news for your knees. When the Eiffel Tower opened, the elevators weren't finished. They did exist, but they just weren't ready. This meant that only the hardiest of guests could accompany Gustave Eiffel to the top during that first tour. But the hefty climb didn't seem to put people off. Within the first week of its opening, nearly 30,000 visitors clambered up the 1,700 or so stairs of the tower, eager to feast their eyes on the views from the top. And feast they did. You gotta remember, this was a time before skyscrapers and airplanes. Most people had never been that high in their entire lives. And to see Paris, that world-famous city of lights, sprawling out beneath them, it really was quite a thrill.
The view changes all the time. It's never the same.
The Eiffel Tower's elevators finally got working on May 26th, prompting even more people to visit the tower. They had been built by the American company Otis, known for its superior standard of quality, which is perhaps best demonstrated by the fact that 2 of the originals are still in use today. Despite the glowing reception Eiffel's Tower received on its opening day, some people vehemently opposed his vision. This group included some of the most influential artists, architects, and writers of the day. The French novelist Léon Bourlon described it as a tragic street lamp, while Guy de Maupassant labeled it the diabolical undertaking of a boilermaker with delusions of grandeur. One group of opponents even organized a petition to halt construction or ensure that it would be disassembled immediately after the Exposition Universelle. Organized by the legendary architect Charles Garnier, the petition gained at least 300 signatures and plenty of momentum. Published in Le Temps on Valentine's Day, it attempted to appeal to the romantic sensibilities and nostalgia of Parisians, but Eiffel pushed back against their narrative, declaring his Iron Tower to be a symbol of the nation's progress. For a good while, Gustave Eiffel remained keenly aware that some Parisians wanted to tear down his elegant masterpiece, and the last thing he wanted to see was his beloved building demolished at the end of the Exposition Universelle. So in response, he promoted the tower as a useful tool for scientists and researchers, who he claimed could use it for their many experiments. Taking this approach helped reinforce Eiffel's claim that the tower represented a great century of industry and science, and French scientists were more than happy to accept his offer. Among the first experiments to take place on the Eiffel Tower was a massive replica of Foucault's pendulum, attached to the second floor's underside. If you don't know what that does, well, join the club, but it's a device that demonstrates the Earth's rotation. Researchers also placed a mercury pressure gauge at the top of the structure, allowing for the calibration of gas and metallic pressure gauges for various industrial purposes. The height of the tower also made it easier than ever before to monitor atmospheric pressure, temperatures, rainfall, wind speed, and humidity. These efforts proved essential to developments in modern meteorology and climatology by emphasizing long-term data collection. Eiffel had many of these findings regularly published, often footing the bill himself. He also had the names of 72 scientists engraved in the first floor of the tower during construction, so maybe it's fitting that it was science that finally saved his tower.
The real reason to keep the tower was to use the tower as a support for a big antenna, for the radio transmission.
Yep. In 1903, the tower acted as a giant radio antenna and got heavy use from the French military. Every evening, the Eiffel Tower was illuminated by gaslights, while the Campanile housed a tricolor beacon that displayed the nation's colors. These fanciful displays were punctuated morning and evening by cannon fire announcing the open and close of each day. Electricity was also used to great effect in the tower's early days. Unlike previous electrical lighting displays, however, exhibits at the 1889 fair focused on more than practicality, as creators began to explore the aesthetic potential of electric light. One example of this was the massive illuminated lamp created by Thomas Edison with 20,000 bulbs. Because so many monarchies have boycotted the Exposition Universelle, the United States became something of a dominant presence at the event, and these innovative uses of electricity helped establish America's reputation as a leading light in electrical innovation. Get it? Besides the incredible views afforded by the Eiffel Tower, a collection of tasteful boutiques and fine restaurants invited visitors to stay a while and relax. Visitors were also greeted by an assortment of souvenirs, novelties, and party tricks commemorating both the Eiffel Tower and the Exposition Universelle as a whole. They could get their photos taken at booths and rent binoculars for better views of the city below. Designed by Stéphane Silvestre, the 4 restaurants sat on the first floor of the tower. Each of these wooden pavilions could seat an impressive 500 people, with the kitchens tucked away on the platform's underside. They were quite eclectic, too. Guests had the choice of dining at a Russian, French, or Flemish restaurant, or an Anglo-American bar. The restaurants offered unique takes on the national or regional cuisines they represented, and the pavilions themselves showcased an array of architectural styles. In the 19th century, the Eiffel Tower was filled not only with boutiques and restaurants, but also a post office, the newsroom of the tower's own newspaper, and of course, Gustave Eiffel's personal digs.
He had his office here, and he went every day to work.
Eiffel's office was located at the absolute pinnacle of the tower. There, he welcomed notable figures such as Thomas Edison and Charles Gounod to savor the views and engage in conversations. Interestingly, Gounod, a French composer, had once signed the petition opposing the Eiffel Tower's construction. Parlez-vous irony? No? An open-air balcony completed Eiffel's office, which, despite its high elevation, didn't exactly lack for amenities. It featured a fully furnished kitchen, a bathroom, and a living room, and was furnished with tables, 3 desks, and even a piano. Besides Eiffel's own accommodations, the office also offered a comfortable living space for any scientists who wished to carry out experiments at the tower. Reports described this special apartment as furnished in the simple style dear to scientists. After World War II, the late Eiffel's office became a storage closet for the electrical equipment needed to service the tower's telecommunications antenna. Since then, though, it's been renovated and reopened to the public. Today, it contains wax sculptures of Gustave Eiffel, Thomas Edison, and Eiffel's daughter Claire. This is supposed to evoke the day the famous American inventor visited Paris to take in the 1889 Exposition Universelle for himself, when he famously gifted Eiffel one of his first sound recording mechanisms. The opening of the Eiffel Tower might have stirred a little controversy, but locals and visitors alike soon fell in love with the structure. As the monument continued to astound those who came to see it, even those once opposed to it began to see the light. Some of those involved with the petition to tear it down even later publicly apologized for opposing its construction. Of course, it's easy to imagine that a quick trip to the top might have changed many of their minds. Before long, Parisians began to feel a real sense of pride at this structure, which they believed represented all that Paris had come to stand for, as a heart of French democracy, modern art, and modern architecture. Tourists were, and still are, equally awed by the tower, and before long it had become one of the world's most famous landmarks.
Everybody come here and can feel happy and realize a dream or feel good.
Gustave Eiffel clearly recognized the merits of his visionary monument, but even he couldn't have anticipated the impact it would have on his city and his homeland. Since his death, it has become not only a symbol of French pride, but also the standard against which all other monuments are measured.